This is the fuel tank that we are converting for use on an old Peterbilt dump truck. The tube you see here will be the suction line. It's an 1.25 inch Schedule 40 aluminum pipe, and this is the angle that the customer wanted. He drew on the end of the tank about the angle and the spot where he wanted the end of the tube to be, so that it sucked off of near the bottom but not all the way at the bottom of the tank. He marked on the side of the tank here where he wanted the two different fittings. You can see the center of the 1-inch return line, and next to it was the point for the 1.25 inch suction tube. First, start by scribing a line around the 1-inch return line, and while I'm doing this, Larry is cutting out a template for the 1.25 inch. This is that template. We cut it out of some scrap we had in the scrap bin. Since it's going through the tank at an angle, we figured this would be the easiest way to figure out that exact shape. So we cut it out at the same angle that it goes through the tank and then scribed around that. Next, we cleaned the area with acetone so we could see these scribed marks that we had just made. That way, while I was cutting it out with the plasma cutter, there wouldn't be any mistake where the hole was supposed to be cut. I'm prepping the plasma cutter here to make these cuts, and while I did this, I had Larry label a can of cutting oil for cutting threads and drilling holes. And what did he do? Labeled it Cutting Earl. Thanks, Larry. And he was proud of himself too. Anyway, back on task. The tips that I'm changing in the torch here, they're what's called a fine cut tip. They cut a very fine kerf, so it's very easy to follow lines that you don't want to mess up. And this was something I didn't want to mess up. I'm now cutting the holes. After I cut the first one, I noticed there was some smoke coming out, so I hooked up the fume extractor, and I cut the second one. Then test fit the suction tube. It went in real good. The problem was it wasn't quite the correct angle. Notice it doesn't line up to those lines, so back to cutting. Trim it out a little bit more, clean it up some with the angle grinder and a stainless steel brush. Don't normally like to do that, but this tank was so nasty and pitted and dirty and oxidized, it needed some power to get it cleaned up. I then wire brush it by hand, which is the way I would normally clean aluminum before welding, because the grinder can actually fold some of the oxidation and dirt in under good material because the material's so soft. I'm tacking the 1-inch return line to the tank right now, and then doing what I call a cleaning pass. I turned the AC balance on the welder down quite a bit, and what that does is it has a cleaning action and actually burns out oxidation and dirt and grease, anything that was left from just brushing it. So after that, we brush it one more time, polish it down to nice clean aluminum, and then turn the balance back up. I usually keep it around 75% for actual welding. This is the first welding pass. Then it's time to clean again. And I also have to grind the end on the tungsten because I had gotten a little bit of aluminum on there and just junk from welding and cleaning the dirty aluminum. Then it's on to the second pass. We're now fitting the suction pipe in. Larry will hold this in place with a solid steel bar stock while I tack it up. Once it is tacked and cleaned, it's time to wire brush it again. Then weld the first pass and wire brush again. Then weld the final pass on. Here's what it looks like when those are all welded up. The weld around the 1¼ inch is a little bit uneven since it was kind of hard to get around all the different angles, but it turned out good. The tape that I use to protect the threads while handling this pipe is just a blue masking tape, and after welding on it, it kind of makes it nice and crispy, and it comes right off pretty easily with just a little wire brushing, get the charred remains of it. The customer can't find a cap for this filler neck, so we are going to make our own lid using a piece of flat aluminum and the other end of the 1¼ inch pipe that we used for the suction line. He got a breather cap to snap on the top of it, and this will all be welded onto the neck on the tank. Since after welding the tubes onto the backside of the tank, the customer had taken the tank home and rinsed it out with gas before he realized he needed a lid on it. On my welder I have this flow meter with two connections. One I am going to run into the tank, turn it on here, and we will flow the argon in. It's heavier than air, so it will push all oxygen and gas fumes out from the bottom. We'll set the flow meter at about 60 CFH, that's cubic feet per hour. This tank is a little less than 10 cubic feet, so that translates into needing to run this at 60 CFH for 10 minutes, and it will evacuate all gas fumes and oxygen so that we don't blow ourselves up. The filler neck on this tank is cast aluminum, so it's not only dirty on the outside, but cast aluminum has pores in it which will hold dirt and oils, and as well as just the casting itself can have impurities in it. So we're going over it and running a cleaning pass with the welder to start with, and then wire brushing it. Wipe it down with some acetone, set the new filler neck onto it, and start tacking it up. Normally, as you can see here, I like to feed the rod with my left hand, run the torch with my right, but about halfway through, needed to switch sides, and it's good to practice being ambidextrous if you TIG weld, because you just never know when you'll be in a situation that you just can't get to some areas. So here's the cap going on. Everything fits and looks pretty nice. I had left the argon flowing at about 5 or 10 CFH while I was welding, just to make sure no oxygen and gas fumes build up in the tank and caused a problem. So here, I turn that back off now that we're totally done.
Well, that's a wrap on this project. Come check out another video about all the cleaning methods that we used on such a dirty tank to get the results that we got with the welds. Well, till next time, let's go build something and get dirty.